Okay, 6-4 is converting fractions, decimals, and percents. Now we have done some of these, you just haven't had a calculator before, so that should make this a lot easier, okay? And I'm going to show you how to reduce your fractions on your calculator, on the calculator that I have in the classroom that you can borrow. If you have a different calculator, you may have to figure that one out on your own if I'm not sure how to, if I'm not comfortable with using it. All right, so some of these are review. But like I said, it'll make it easier because we can use a calculator for them. So turning a decimal to a fraction, remember that we put the decimal number over the place value. So the place value would be a decimal, and then if the first place would go over 10, the second place it would go over 100. If there's 3 decimal places, it would go over 1,000. So here's some examples. 1 decimal place will go over 10, and you would make sure you reduce it. 2 decimal places like 0.35 would go over 100 because that's the hundredths place, and then I'm going to divide them both by 5. Sometimes reducing is faster to do in your head. Sometimes you need a calculator. 0.175, that would be 175 over 1,000. So this would be one time that I might want to use my calculator. So there's 2 different ways to do this. You can take the number and do the top number over the bottom, divided by the bottom. So do you see how on the calculator there's a little slash? That's your fraction bar. And then you actually hit, you don't hit equal yet, you would actually hit math, which is this button right by the, this button right by the, underneath the green button. You would hit math, and then you would hit enter twice. And you see that it comes out to 7/40. Okay, and I'm going to write that up here, how to reduce. We'll write ourselves a note. 1.8. So if you have a whole number and a decimal, you're going to have a whole number and a fraction. That'd be one place, so it's 8 over 10, which is 1 4/5. So up here, to reduce fractions with the calculator. One way is to do the top divided by the bottom. I always do this way, math, enter, enter. I think it's faster. The other way is to hit the math button. At the top there's a frac and number 1. So I'll show you that one. So if I hit the math button, up here in the corner is this frac button. You'd have to arrow over to the right and hit for frac. You want a fraction, so that's number 1. So you'll just, it's always highlighted, so you hit 1. So do you see how it is a fraction now? So now you can type 175 on top, 1,000 on the bottom. When you hit enter, you get 7/40 again. I think this one takes longer for reducing. That button's probably better if you want to actually solve problems with fractions. That's how you would get a fraction. You would hit math. Actually, if you go 1 to the left, it gets you there. Frac. Make sure it's highlighted on 1, enter, and there's your fraction. It turns it into a fraction for you. But I think this one's probably a little quicker. Next is turning a fraction into a decimal. We're going to use the calculator. So it's top divided by bottom. For this one, I want you to round 3 places. So if I have 16 over 20, we're going to do 16 divided by 20 and get 0.8. 2 3/10. If I have a mixed number, that means I'm going to have a whole number plus the decimal. 3/10 is easy, that's just 0.3. 7/12, a little trickier. So 7 divided by 12. And I said 3 decimal places, so I'm going to keep the 5, 8, and since there's a 3 and then another 3, I'm going to round. We're not going to use bars for these. So since there's 3 next to the 3, I'm going to round it to just 3. Turning a fraction into a percent. So if you want to find your grade and I don't put a percent on it for you, you would take the top number, what you got, divided by the bottom, which is the total, and you would times it by 100. So if you had 6 out of 15 on a quiz, we would do 6 6 divided by 15 times 100, and I would get 40. If I just do 6 divided by 15, you see how you get just 0.4, and then you would turn it into a percent to one of two ways, either timesing by 100 or actually just physically moving the decimal place 2 to the right. So that one we said is 40%. Turning a percent into a fraction. Well, on a test, you know that the perfect is 100%. Yes, you can get more than 100% if you get extra credit or whatever, but if you just are doing the regular ones, 100 is the amount that it's out of. So because it's out of 100, a fraction or a percent is always out of 100, we're going to put our percent number over 100, and we lose the percent when we do that, and then we will reduce. So if I have 72%, I'm going to put the 72 over 100. Notice I no longer have the percent. This is out of 100, so I either use the percent to show it's out of 100, or I can make a fraction to show it's out of 100. And then I would reduce it. So if you want to do 72 divided by 100, math, enter, enter, that would be 18 over 25. You can also do them in your head. There are times that I have more than 100. If you do 105 divided by 100, math, enter, enter, your calculator will not do mixed numbers. It will reduce it so the fraction is as small as it can go, but then you would have to turn it into the mixed number. Turning a decimal to a percent, you can just simply move the decimal to right. Instead of thinking, do I have to make this divide or times, you can just move the decimal 2 to the right. So remember how I said I want you to round it 3 places? So that one that I did up here, I'm going to rewrite it. And if I'm turning it into a percent, you can times by 100, but it's just as fast to just physically move the decimal 2 places to the right, and you'll get your percent. If I have 1.26, I'm still going to move it 2 to the right. You can have a percent over 100. What if there isn't anything to move it? Right? That's like having a 0 after it, so that is 60%. If I want to go the opposite way and go percent to decimal, the percent number always looks big, but it's not because it's out of 100. This is really only 72 out of 100. This isn't a big number. This is a fractional number or a decimal number. So if I have a big number and I need to turn it back into a decimal, I got to go the other direction. So we're going to move the decimal to left. So if I have 52%, the decimal would normally be here. If I go to left, it's going to be 0.52. I have 200%. Still going to start at the back and move it, and that would be just a 2. If I have 3%, I still have to move it 2. So right, just like the other way, I have to add a 0, and that'd be 0.03. So what you'll be having to do for homework is you'll be given 1 and you have to fill in the other 2. So these are all pretty much filled in. I'm just going to move it 2 to the right and fill this. So what will happen is you'll be given 1. So if I have a percent, I can decide how I'm going to do this. Maybe I want to move it 2 to the left and turn my decimal first. Maybe I want to come over here and say 20 over 100 first, which is 1 over 5. You will have to reduce fractions. And then you're done. You can do it in whatever order you want. If I have 17 over 20, maybe I want to do the decimal first, because that gives me 0.85. Then it's really easy to move it 2 to the right to get 85%. Make sure you're moving 2 to the right. 0.5 should be a known. You probably wouldn't even need to use your calculator or reduce, because you already know that 0.5 is 1/2. Same thing with 75%, 0.75. 75 over 100 is 3/4.